First, let's look at a short article on leadership by Springer Nature. It shows that a leader's communication style affects the team's success. Leaders who are supportive, clear, and expressive are seen as more effective because they build trust, commitment, and knowledge sharing. In contrast, task-oriented leaders who communicate less don't get the same result. They take away that is stronger. Communication is essential for effective leadership and not just authority or decision making. Connecting this to leadership, Rothwell defines leadership as a process, not a position. Leadership isn't just about authority, it's about influencing others and guiding the group towards the shared goal. A good leader communicates in ways that motivate, support, and empower the team. Leadership is a two-way process involving both giving direction and listening, adapting, and collaborating. There are different types of leadership styles: directive, participative, and transformational. But the most effective leaders combine communication competence with their approach. For instance, a participative leader listens to everyone's ideas before deciding, requiring strong listening and empathy. In small groups or teams, effective communication helps leaders keep the ground focused, resolve conflicts, and maintain positive climate. Without communication competence, even talented leaders can lose trust or cause misunderstanding. Leadership can also be shared. Different members can take the lead depending on the task. Communication competence ensures that this flexibility works smoothly, as team members know how to express themselves clearly and respectfully.
Okay, so another section of this chapter is management and leadership. There are some differences between a leader and a manager. For example, leaders will influence people while managers control processes, like for example, inside a company. Leaders, they can drive change whilst managers maintain stability around these changes. And another point in this section of the chapter was being charismatic. As a leader specifically, being charismatic and using your charm will be a factor of how people portray you and how you are understood as a leader. But at the same time, it's not the factor that's most important. The most important factor is that you're a competent communicator. Leaders and managers are also not opposites, but their roles overlap. So a leader can manage budgets and effectively plan, whilst a manager can lead by inspiring change. And true professionals, they will use both these skill sets where they both inspire and are organized instead of one or the other. I did find an article that connected to this topic that was not in the book or related to the book. And my article is found on Forbes.com, and it is called, "Are You a Leader or a Manager?" And the key takeaways from this article was that managers focus on people and execution, leaders add vision and strategy, and both roles are essential and interdependent, as well as that strong management skills are the foundation of effective leadership, and leadership involves seeing the big picture and digging into details. And the best leaders ask thoughtful questions and empower others, and they build trust. And those were the key points of this article. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'll be talking about how to not become a leader. So in our generation today, everybody's striving to become a leader. 81% of our current generation, which is Gen Z, has shown interest in wanting to become a leader. Some of the reasons for this is that it brings status, respect, power, influence, and change. There's many opportunities for college students to emerge as leaders, and there are many opportunities for people to emerge as leaders, and it's often easier to know what you shouldn't do when looking to become a leader. There are 7 things that you shouldn't do as a leader. For the first thing is that you shouldn't have a me orientation. You should focus on making sure that the group isn't centered around yourself. This means that you should focus on building a relationship with your group and focus on their goals over yours. Second thing is that you shouldn't fake it till you make it. This is bad because it's important to know what you are talking about when trying to command a group's attention. Thirdly is that you shouldn't promote sluggish participation within your group. Participation within a group shows that you are committed, so you should focus on having meaningful participation within your group. Fourth thing is that you shouldn't dominate the conversation. This is bad because when you talk too much, people who dominate the conversation generally don't leave room for others to participate. Fifth thing that you shouldn't do is to make sure that you're listening. You want to avoid being a know-it-all and aim towards being more of like a learn-it-all and listen to like the others. Sixth thing is that you should make sure that you're not closed-minded. You want to make sure that you have an open-minded approach when trying to become a leader, because it lets everyone in the group be heard and have their ideas listened to. The last thing that you shouldn't do is to have emotional outbursts. This shows you have emotional incompetence, and people will start to think you're unstable or unfit to be a leader. An article did a study about who emerges as a leader in the group, and it showed that it's typically the ones who have the most skills that emerge as the leaders in the group.
Hello guys, I am Charmaine, and the topic that I'm going to talk about is general emergence pattern, process of elimination.
Wow!
Now, you guys might be wondering, what are the common ways leaders are chosen in small groups? The answer is process of elimination. Usually, leaders are not selected all at once. Instead, people who aren't fit for the role are gradually ruled out. Interestingly, we often know what kind of person we don't want as a leader, but we're not always clear about what kind of person or leader we actually do want. Another important point is that leadership can change over time. Someone who's a leader today might not be a leader tomorrow, and that can actually be good because it helps the group adapt to new challenges. Now, you might find this surprising or interesting, I don't know, depends on you. Crying at work is actually more common than people think, even though crying is seen as a taboo. In one survey of over 3,000 people, about 5% said that they cry at work daily, and 8% say that they cry weekly, and half, which is 50%, said that they cry occasionally, sometimes. However, crying is often seen as a sign that someone lacks leadership potential. You better note that, especially for men. Around 59% of bosses think that crying makes women look bad.
Stop the cows!
And 63% think that it's a big mistake for men. Because of this, it's generally better to cry in private if needed. But leaders should also pay attention to what might cause distress at work that's making people cry. This awareness is part of being a responsible leader. Now, there are two phases in emergence. Research show that leader emergence usually happen in two phases. In the first phase, about half of the group members are eliminated from consideration. This happens based on quick impressions rather than careful evaluations. People who communicate in negative ways, like being rude, interrupting, or not listening at all, are often ruled out. Think of this phase as a gut feeling filter, or like first impressions of people. The group is looking for who shouldn't lead before considering who could lead. In the second phase, the group starts looking for people who are good at getting things done and who cares for the group's goals and not only for their own success. Leaders are expected to take action and help the group reach its objectives. If the group faces a challenge like choosing a topic for a project or losing key members, they often turn to the person who can actually solve the problem, and that person will become the leader, at least temporarily. Emotional intelligence plays a very big role here. People who can understand and manage their own emotions, as well as the emotions of others, are more likely to become leaders. Studies shows that understanding emotions is one of the strongest predictors of leadership emergence. Another factor in this second phase is having an advocate. An advocate is someone who supports and promotes your ideas and skills. For example, if someone says, Natalie knows most about fundraising, so she could lead us, and that endorsement will boost Natalie for the chances of her becoming a leader. Sometimes multiple advocates may exist, which can lead to shared leadership.
Brother,
Now I'll be talking about virtual group leadership emergence. Leadership in group or online groups. Now I'll be talking about virtual group leader emergence. Leadership in virtual or online group works in similar ways. But there are some differences. Participation and contribution are still key. People in online groups don't respond well to leaders who are dominant, stubborn, self-centered. Instead, they respond positively to leaders who are inclusive, cooperative, caring, and good listeners. Yippee! Interestingly, in online groups, the people who actually do the work, planning, helping teammates, managing the task, are even more likely to become leaders than in face-to-face groups. Personality, charm, and charisma matter less online. What? Emotional intelligence is harder to display, and being charismatic doesn't impress members as much. The most important quality for a virtual leader is being effective, action-oriented, which is doers. In conclusion, whether in person or online, leaders emerge through a combination of participation, competence, and emotional intelligence, and support, and of course the support from others. Being someone who gets things done, works well with the group, and helps others succeed is what ultimately makes a leader stands out.
Hello, we'll be talking about implicit theories of leadership. So what this means is that it refers to somebody's personal beliefs about what traits make an effective leader. So it's their ideal type of leader. Unfortunately, people usually picture a man as their ideal leader. This could be bad because women actually usually score higher on leader effectiveness. There's a best-selling book by Thomas Przemek that proclaimed that most leaders are bad and most leaders are male. There's also a study that showed more than 180 companies out of 3,000 had no females on their board in a leadership position. Another study also showed that when people are asked to think of leaders, people usually tend to think of white. Something people can do to overcome the implicit theory is to gain advocates. This is really effective because gaining passionate advocates that support you helps to break down this stereotype. Something I found really interesting is how people who typically fit the stereotypical leadership qualities were actually narcissists and psychopaths. A study was done by a forensic psychologist that shared that there are about 21% psychopathic executives in a business, which is similar to the amount people have in a prison population. Although there's an implicit theory of leadership, there's always a way to break through to make yourself a leader with help of others around you who support you.
Perspectives on what truly defines competent leadership has changed since the first research about this topic was conducted nearly a century ago. The 7 perspectives that we're going to talk about are somewhat of a linear progression of how views on leadership effectiveness have evolved and improved over the years.
The first perspective is the born leader view, which states that leaders are born, not made. It is the idea that leadership is viewed in a person and not as a process. With this perspective, we look for people that are naturally and exceptionally talented to model after as the best version of leadership. In a sense, it's taking some of the most prominent figures of today and history and viewing them through a rose-tinted lens. All it does is view these exceptional individuals as model leaders, even if they weren't very good or effective as a leader. More often than not, we also perceive men to fit into the leadership category more often than women. The chapter discusses how a survey given to CEOs in 60 different countries recorded that 96% of male CEOs and 83% of female CEOs did not mention a single female leader when asked which leaders respondents most admired. This cultural perspective of males having more leadership qualities detracts from the idea that leadership is a process and instead perceives leadership to be inherent traits that one is born with, and in this example, in regard to gender. Another example of the born leader view can be displayed from a Quinnipiac University poll in 2014, which found that 80% of American respondents viewed Vladimir Putin as dishonest and untrustworthy, and 33% weren't sure about his mental stability, yet 57% saw him as possessing strong leadership qualities. This is one out of many examples that we as a society perceive strong personalities as naturally effective leaders. There is also the belief that a universal set of traits are an integral component of leadership effectiveness, sometimes with little consideration for ethical behavior. Leadership traits are described to be things such as intelligence, quick-wittedness, confidence, trustworthiness, and integrity. However, surveys show that one overarching trait is thought to be integral to every leader: charisma. This leans into the perspective that people must have inherent traits that they are born with to be effective leaders. While this may seemingly make sense, it is typically humble leaders, not charismatic, self-pretentious leaders, that perform better. Humble leaders tend to exemplify ethical behavior better than leaders that focus on charisma. Although leaders need to be bright, adept, and social individuals, there is no universal set of traits that assures leadership emergence or effectiveness. This is because traits such as intelligence, confidence, and attractiveness could be neutralized by unfriendliness, ethical indifference, laziness, arrogance, and/or insensitivity. While there are certainly basic traits needed in a leader, such as being intelligent and socially adept, effective leaders need to have good communication and transactions between themselves and their group members. Thus, the idea that the quality of leadership residing in the person becomes void because it all depends on how the leader is able to conduct and lead out a group with other people. This negates the perspective that leaders are born, because effective leaders are not born, they are developed.
The styles perspective of leadership focuses on the fact that one style doesn't fit all situations. This is an approach that was created by Kurt Lewin, and it covers 3 main areas: autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. The autocratic leadership style is an approach to management that utilizes control over group members with very little input from other group members and does not encourage participation from others. This puts more emphasis on the task and very little concern for the social dimension of the group, often leading to quick decisions, but sometimes with a lower morale. Laissez-faire leadership gives the group members total freedom. Often viewed as the absence of leadership, it avoids making decisions or taking action when needed. It can work if the entire group is highly motivated and skilled. However, if there are people who are less skilled or less motivated, it can sometimes struggle. Democratic leadership is a style and mix between the last two and encourages participation and responsibility from the group members. The responsibility is balanced between the leader and the group. The discussions are primarily led by the leader. However, they make sure to listen to the group members, resulting in a more positive and inclusive environment. No specific one style of leadership will be perfect for every leadership situation, and some of these affect groups much different than others.
The distributive leadership perspective is recognizing the idea that we're all in this together. This is this perspective that embraces the concept that leadership is more of a process than a person. It recognizes the importance of the group situation and tries to view it in a more advantageous, functional way. Therefore, finding the right balance between task requirements and social needs is essential with this perspective. As a shared responsibility, leadership is demonstrated when any member steps in to fulfill empty roles that are not already taken. This is what it means to share the function of leadership with each other. For example, if the group is thinking about making a specific decision, this situation would call for someone to step into the role of the devil's advocate to double check if the group is going in the right direction. Distributive leadership is a perspective that utilizes the groups as systems view. This perspective views leadership as a system of interconnected networks of shared responsibility for group success. However, it acknowledges that team training is essential for this to work. Because a system can get naturally diverse, the more challenging shared leadership will become. An example of this is an intensive training exercise that is practiced by the Navy SEALs team. Trainees are divided into teams of 6 and put into boat exercises that force them to exchange leadership roles and positions on the team. This allows the trainees to practice being prepared for all different types of necessary roles so that the group can progress and respond to changes accordingly.
Situational leadership perspectives is the "it depends" leadership approach. Leaders whose style fits well with their situation show strong competence and perform at high levels. One drawback to this is that situational forces that are not in control of the leader can influence leadership effectiveness. Some examples would be sports team coaches, military leaders, music conductors. All of these are judged based on the successes or failures of their group members. Despite any outside situations, such as inadequate support, weak resources, or other external factors, leaders who learn to be flexible and to adapt to the situation often have the best success. In this situational leadership, there is a model by Hersey and Blanchard that shows 4 specific leadership styles. There's a telling style, a selling style, participating style, and delegating style. The telling style is more of a directing leadership style and has a high task and low relationship emphasis. In this style, leaders give clear instructions and supervise tasks closely. The selling style is more of a coaching leadership style that has high focus on both the task and the relationships. The leader with this style provides direction but also offers support and encouragement. And he tries to convince the followers to accept the directions laid out in front of them. The participating style of leadership is a supportive leader who focuses less on the task and much more on the relationships. This is also a non-directive leadership position. The leaders involve others in the decision-making process and allow a more collaborative environment to those who are following. The delegating style is a low task and low relationship style, which is non-directive. The leaders provide minimal direction and support, which allows the group to be self-directed and be responsible for their own tasks. This often works well with a group of highly competent and motivated individuals. Servant leadership perspective, an ethical necessity. Ethical leadership fundamentally involves how leaders treat followers. Recently, the principle of ethical leadership to serve others has gained a lot of popularity. Ethical leaders are servant leaders who place the good of followers over their own self-interests and emphasize follower development and demonstrate strong moral behaviors towards others. Instead of being focused on one's own self-interests, the leader must be focused on caring for other people and around them. Servant leadership involves 5 elements of communication on ethics. A servant leader is honest, respectful, fair towards followers, provides choices for followers when possible, and is responsible for helping the group achieve goals in ethically acceptable ways. A key part of servant leadership is helping mentor followers to also become leaders by building relationships with group members to create an atmosphere of empowerment. A study was done titled Servant Leadership, a New Perspective to Explore Project Leadership and Team Effectiveness. This study found that effective leaders provide clarity to team goals and task processes, which in turn facilitates the accomplishment of project objectives. When teams experience servant leadership, they are more likely to exchange by supporting each other in performing common tasks. The impact of servant leadership on a team results in positive and effective team growth, as well as accomplishments through the follower-centric style of leadership.
So culture and leadership, are they connected? And if so, how are they connected? This might not come as a big surprise, but the United States is actually one of the places that has had most knowledge about leadership for quite some time. According to researchers at Tenaya and House, the United States have been the ones most focused on leadership and had the most research to back it up. And because of this, our overall understanding is going to be strongly influenced by the American character. Does this mean that all cultures have the same perspective on leadership? Is what works in one culture the same as a different culture? There's no right or wrong answer to this question for now. But what we do know is that culture differences play a huge role when it comes to how leadership is viewed and interpreted. A study on this proves this fact. The GLOBE project was a study that involved 170 scholars worldwide. They studied 62 cultures and 17,300 individuals in 951 organizations. The study showed that, for example, Americans, Asians, Eastern Europeans, and Germans idolize strong leaders and the power that they hold. For instance, having their name on a building or a street, etc., because it shows how powerful and big they are. On the other hand, the study also shows that countries like Switzerland, Scandinavia, and the Netherlands have a more skeptical viewpoint and fear how the leaders will abuse their power. Another aspect of this study was the leadership styles and how the cultures each had their own styles and ways of leading. So I wanted to quote from the book where it says, "Leadership characterized as elitist, self-centered, and egoistical is perceived to be slightly effective in Albania, Taiwan, Egypt, Iran, and Kuwait. All other countries in the GLOBE study, however, especially Northern European countries, had a very negative opinion of such leadership. The participant leadership style typically accepted or even preferred in Western cultures is questionably effective in Eastern cultures. And the directive leadership is strongly favored more in the Middle Eastern countries and cultures." Yes.
Now let's talk about the communication competence. Rothwell defines it as an ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in a situation. It's not just about talking, it's about connecting in a way that helps the group reach its goals with respecting others. Communication competence involves 3 key elements: knowledge, skill, and sensitivity. Knowledge is understanding how communication works, knowing group norms, recognizing verbal and nonverbal cues, and predicting how messages might be received. Skill is putting that knowledge into action, like actively listening, giving constructive feedback, or asking clear questions. Sensitivity is being aware of others' feelings, backgrounds, and perspectives, and adjusting to your communication accordingly.
Overall, leadership development takes time. An article by Heather Byrne says, depending on where learners are starting from, coming to see themselves as leaders for sustainability could be a complete shift in worldview. Thus, it is imperative that key values such as observation and awareness be utilized to effectively develop leadership qualities in learners. By growing as communities full of leaders, interconnectedness and interdependence will soon follow and allow us to have a more sustainable future.
In conclusion, communication competence and leadership go hand in hand. Competent communicators are more likely to be effective leaders because they can motivate others, listen actively, and manage disagreements respectfully. Communication competence builds trust, teamwork, and understanding, while leadership guides the group towards shared goals. Both skills develop practice and are essential for successful teamwork. Thank you all for listening.